Hello there. What's up, everybody? This is the Star Wars Stuff Podcast. I am Hannah.
I'm Riley.
I'm sorry.
I'm Brooke.
I'm Jillian.
And I'm Star.
And today we have a special episode. Shout out to Colin for setting all of this up for us. We're really excited. And today we're going to talk about women in Star Wars. I feel like this is a great conversation to have anytime, but kind of got the idea because of the viral, I would say, audio going around that I think caused most everyone, if not everyone here, and thousands of other people to make response videos, which I honestly really loved seeing. I love seeing
same
people make and do. Yeah. What do you guys think?
It was really cool to see all the female creators of everything Star Wars, whether it cosplay or products or even just fan accounts, get on and be like, hey, I'm a female and I love Star Wars. So, and there's thousands of them. And it was a really cool rallying moment.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things that makes you feel like your heart is going to burst, like when you're just looking at all of them.
Yeah.
It's just very overwhelming, like in a positive way.
And I love that so many of the videos were very community centric. So it was this huge group of girls that are just having a great time, within a community where they feel happy and accepted. And it was really great to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think it was just amazing how fast it happened and how quick everyone was to just instantly be like, we are going to defend what we love and we're going to talk about it and reignite the spark that we have for just the wonderful world of Star Wars. That truly was what I loved about it, just how quickly everyone was ready to just affirm their love for it. So that was what was really passionate throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I think I actually saw response videos before I wound up seeing the original sparked video. I had to be oh, this is cool. We're talking about our love of Star Wars. I had no idea that it was because of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think no, I saw Hannah's video and I was like, what is this audio? I was like, what is this from? And then
right? I was what is that?
I was like, this is so nice, but also what?
Yes. Yeah.
That trend started a few days after the first thing.
Yeah.
And so I had because I'm unfortunately on twitter.com. And so there was just a few days where I was just upset because of that. And then seeing what came out of it, it was just kind of okay, this makes me feel so much better. And then I'm seeing all these other people that are you know what? Yeah. And it's just yes, okay, everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't just women who came out either. There was a ton of guys too, which was extra awesome, I think. The whole Star Wars community being what are you talking about? Obviously women like Star Wars.
Yeah, such an overwhelming response too. There wasn't really any room for someone to be I mean, it's just a couple people, but it was just it was all over my social media for a solid week, and I was this is just so positive and lovely.
Yeah.
I totally think you're right, Sai, because I feel the fact that there were so many people made it just seem like the more and more videos you saw, the more you were oh, that's such a ridiculous thing, because look at how many people are responding. Look at how much support there is. Look at how many Star Wars sisters there are. And that was really cool.
Right. And it wasn't even just stuff they had gone out and shot as a response. It was people reusing videos and photos they'd had for months or even years to be even before this was a sentiment that you decided to express on the internet, I was here doing this, completely minding my own business along with everyone else.
Yeah, I feel it's important to remember that women have always liked Star Wars. I mean, I was talking with some people at work, and then I was talking with my mom yesterday, and she was I was there watching the Star Wars movies in the theater. She has a great picture of her with a Han Solo cardboard cutout that she's It's incredible. So I got it from her. So she's been there. So I can only imagine how many other people, women especially, have been. you know,
It's
in love with
funny. Right after this, I chatted with my dad, and he used to go to the movie theater when he was a kid. He was there when New Hope came out. And he had an older sister and a younger sister, and they would all three go to watch Star Wars, and they would hide under the like movie theater seats and like wait for the playing to restart so that they could watch it again. You know, it wasn't
Yes.
That's awesome.
like, of course his sisters like Star Wars. Like, of course they were there, you know.
Yeah, I love that.
And it was just like things like that, people bringing up like old memories, old park videos. It wasn't just like instant, like, oh, we're gonna now like go put on our kits and make a video. It was like everyone like sort of sharing their love and sharing their history with Star Wars. So that's what I loved. And I know I was like just seeing these montages like all put together, and they're all so different because some of them are like we're saying, like park, like going to Galaxy's Edge. Some of it was like all different stuff. So lots of like everything from like people who are making like clone kits. It was everything. You got to see every little bit that we love about it.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of going off all of that, so I know obviously there are lots of moments that we really have stick with us in like our community and with Star Wars as a whole. But what is your like first Star Wars memory?
Mine's kind of boring because I don't remember. I've had Star Wars in my life since I was an infant, so part of me is like grateful for that, but part of me is like really jealous of the people that can remember like their first experience. But I love seeing other people's first experience. That's kind of like my secondhand, like, yes, very good.
I feel like I get that. When I was thinking about it, I was like, you know, like I said, my mom really loves Star Wars, so I feel like I don't fully remember, but I do remember when I was like 10, kind of like quote unquote rediscovering it, and just like falling in love with it kind of all over again. And yeah, I feel like I had almost like a second rediscovery too, because I never had anyone that told me to watch Clone Wars until I met my boyfriend. So I feel like I got to see like a whole new thing open up, like a whole new world open up, and became even bigger, and it was awesome.
I think I have two first memories of Star Wars. I know one came first, but like I have the one where it's like, I don't know, I discovered it, I guess, and realized what I was watching. And then like when I took it for my own, it's like my dad watched Star Wars all the time. So like I probably saw it when I was 2 months old. Like, I don't know. He watched it constantly. I have a very distinct memory of watching The Phantom Menace. And I must have been 2 or 3. And I remember watching Jar Jar. And that was my first memory. It's like, oh, look at that guy. And then like the first memory that I have where I like took Star Wars as my own is when I was 4. My mom took me to Walmart to pick out my very own lightsaber. And she was like, it's time to get a lightsaber when I was 4. And I was like, okay. And so we went to the toy section, and there was all, you know, those like retractable lightsabers that you had, you know, and she's like, you got to pick out your color, you got to pick out your hilt. And it was because my dad was gone on a trip, and we were all going to go to the airport and surprise him with our lightsabers. And I was so cute. The handle and what color I wanted, and it was green, and it had the little like spikes that Ahsoka has that would show up years later. But it was like this green spiked handle, and I was just like, I want this one. And that's pretty much my first like Star Wars related, like, oh, this is mine. And I still have that lightsaber. So Jar Jar and that, I guess.
I feel like mine piggybacks with the lightsaber experience. It was being over like when I was like 5 or something at a friend's house, and like I think their brother was like, do you guys want to see something cool? And they turn off all the lights, and then he just ignites the lightsaber and hands it to us, and it's just looking up and at this like glowing, just what would then become a glowing future of a further obsession of owning lightsabers myself. So definitely that was like, I was like, what's this from? And it's like, let me show you. And
That's awesome.
That's so sweet.
I don't even know what my first memory is because it's been in my life since before I could remember. Like both my parents liked it, but especially my dad. So I grew up on it. Like I do remember like we would play with his like vintage toys. So it makes me like cringe now because we were children playing with these vintage Star Wars toys as children do. Like he had the Ewok Village, and he had so much stuff. And it was just like we just played with them. That was just my childhood. And it was just like my whole family was into it. And it's just something that like as it grew and we grew, like it's just been always a part of our lives. I literally don't know what my life is like without it, because I have no memory of my life without it.
That's very fair. Yeah.
I love that. I'm definitely very new. I remember the exact time that I saw the first Star Wars movie I watched, but then like honestly that was like I watched the movies, it was very enjoyable to me, but that wasn't like the experience I really remember as like the time I discovered Star Wars. Someone on this call is actually there when I did it. It was with Riley at the like we did a cabin trip together, and I don't know how it happened or who suggested it, but someone was like, we should just sit down and watch the entire prequels together. And I was like, oh, I'd never seen them before. And so everyone was there just like watching me as I was, you know, basically making really bad takes as I tried to predict what was going to happen. I was wrong. I still think my ending was better, but fine.
Calling Anakin a lamp.
But yeah, everyone was there, and it was such a fun experience. Like watch the, you know, first movie and then sit there and talk about it and discuss it for like a solid 3.5 hours. And then the next day we watched the other two, and it was just like a wonderful, welcoming experience. And I just like, I remember like right at that point, I was like, you know what? There's a lot of lore here. I definitely want to learn more. And then, you know, it spirals into me advocating for clone rights angrily on a phone call. You know, like, keep going from there.
That is one of my favorite experiences of like seeing someone else get into Star Wars, was just like sitting there with everyone and Sai, and just like Sai making all these like takes and just sitting there and like watching her see all this for the first time. It was just like, yeah.
When I tell you, I was like on the floor when Qui-Gon died, because like somehow in my mind there was a 3-year gap between like when I saw like the original trilogy for the first time and when I saw the prequels for the first time. So in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, that guy, he's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh no!
She fell to the ground.
Sitting there being like, he's gonna be fine. We see him in the what are you guys like? Come on, it's gonna be fine. And it's just like first episode, he's gone, and I was like, what happened?
You despair.
The whiplash that you experienced in that moment.
Did you pause it or let it just keep going?
No. I think we just kept going, because I remember like around that time there's like an Obi-Wan move where he's like very heartbroken about it, and I'm sitting there being like, bro, are we watching the same movie?
Like the despair. It was sad, but
happen,
so
and in
funny.
like the first 20 minutes I was like, I am wrong.
Oh gosh.
It was so funny.
I love that. Yeah, seeing other people like get into it is definitely, I feel like I've experienced that with like a lot of different things. So seeing like I have some younger cousins getting into it more, and it's just such a great experience and thing to watch them like get more and more excited over.
Yeah, and that's kind of has to do with like the fact that Star Wars has spanned so many generations. You know, it started in the 70s, you've got it continuing on until now. We're still making movies. You've got, you know, the originals, you've got the prequels, you've got the sequels, you've got the shows, you've got so much. It spans so many generations. There's something in it for everyone.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you like. If you like Jedi, if you like clones, if you like bounty hunters, you know, that's one of the best things is like watching people get into it and find their niche and find like, I like this, you know, I like this part of Star Wars. I like all of it, or whatever it is that they like. There's something in it for everyone. And that's just it's one of the best parts about Star Wars to me, is just seeing what do people like? What's your show type? Do you like the animated stuff? Do you not like? It's really cool to see what people get into.
Yeah, I agree. And like for me, like having that like kind of second discovery, I feel like I kind of got to see like most of you and like my boyfriend kind of see me go through that, like discovering all these things, because I think me and Sai were kind of watching like the animated shows kind of around the same time, but like I think you watched Rebels first, right? And then I was watching Clone Wars. Like I just went through all of it, and
Yeah.
like 2 months.
And
Because
remember
yeah,
and there
it was.
Mhm. It's the episode where you meet Gungi for the first time and they're building lightsabers, and
Yep.
we had kind of caught up
Alien.
near each other, so we were around the same part. And it was, you should have seen us. We were just like, I think I might still have them saved, but like we were just Snapchatting each other back and forth, being like, if anything happens to these younglings,
If anything happens to them, I will simply riot.
yeah.
I remember when
I was
Sai
gonna
was
drive down to Lucasfilm.
when Sai was going through that arc, and she had sent me a message being like, if anything happens to this little baby Wookiee, and I just send
Oh
a
my God.
smiley face, I would give her no information. I just send a smiley face.
Brutal.
And she was like, what does that mean?
I know.
Sai,
I was
how
like,
did
40,
you
I
feel
like live
watching-
45 minutes away from like Lucasfilm, so I'm like, if anything happens, I'm going to drive down there and hold the current employees responsible for this TV show that they have.
That poor guard at the guard box is gonna get the earful of a lifetime.
He's just like, I just work here.
Oh man.
Were you happy to see Gungi again in Bad Batch season 2?
Oh my god. The trailer and celebration. When that boy popped on the screen, it was beautiful.
Like, my boy.
Me and Sai
That's gonna be
went.
like a celebration moment I'll remember forever.
Yes. Oh my God. I saw him. I was like, that's all I need. That's all I needed. It was perfect. Oh gosh. Oh. So speaking of like all these little moments that we love, what are some of your favorite moments, your biggest favorite moment? It can be like specifically with a female character. Well, I can't speak. Or doesn't have to be, whatever you feel. Like, what is one of your favorite moments?
Hmm.
I don't know if it's like one moment, but just like Ahsoka, like in the last few episodes of like season 7 of the Clone Wars, is just like, it gives me goosebumps. I just like, she is the moment. I just like the wisdom that she has and that she's gained, and like just like with her battle with Maul, just like all of it, just like I felt empowered. I watched that and I was just like, pop off. Like I don't even know. I just like, I love her so much, and like just that was just, I think it's like some of my favorite thing that like Star Wars has done. Like it's not a movie, but like if that bit was, it would be my favorite.
Mhm.
Mine comes, I have like a bunch of favorite moments from the shows and the movies, but one of the most recent ones is it comes from Jedi Fallen Order, and Master Cordova, there's a playback, a video recording of him, and he's talking to BD1, and Cal's listening to it, and it's just, of course, the words that he needs to hear in that moment. It's hope will always survive and those who continue to fight. And Cal just kind of like sits at that for a minute because he's at like his breaking point. And just hearing that and just seeing him kind of like sober up with that thought, it was just like one of my favorite Star Wars moments to date. Such a good line too, man.
That is, yeah.
That's
like
deep.
Yeah. And I like that it's something from a video game that you feel like is your favorite. Like, again, kind of going back to that, everyone has like kind of their niche, like Star said. Like, kind of find something that you're more, I don't want to say more connected to, but like just drawn to more. Some people like books a ton, you know, video games. Like I haven't personally played the video games, but like I love hearing about them from like you or like anyone else. So I like that your favorite is from a video game.
It's a banger.
Very
Mine
fair.
was actually from like the one more recent one was actually from a book. It's the second Thrawn book when Thrawn is heading to Batuu with Darth Vader, and he has that like, I think it's like 3 pages, and like such a fantastic scene where he explains that for the Chiss, they call those who navigate through space and who use the Force, they call them Skywalkers. And it was just like a moment where like on this page, the way that it was written, you could just like feel what Vader was feeling, and it's just a good character building moment. It's so good.
I like that. Nice. Yeah. I feel like I have such a hard time choosing favorites. And like Riley said, like I have so many favorite moments like from the shows and from other things. And I was trying to think a little bit more outside of the box here. And I think something that kind of hit me more deep, to go off size like book, little book comment. This is kind of from the Princess and the Scoundrel book and also part of the movies. So I feel like a scene that kind of hits me a bit more after reading, especially the beginning of Princess and Scoundrel, is the scene where Luke is burning Vader's body. I feel like it kind of means more to me now after also reading Leia's point of view, because she kind of, spoiler alert for anyone that really, wants to read it. Not that big of a spoiler. He's dead. Okay. I think we all know that if we're here.
What? Oh my god,
No!
what now?
What?
So, I don't even watch Star Wars. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm so sorry. So you kind of have this moment at the beginning of the book where Leia like feels this pull. And by the time she gets to the pyre, Luke isn't there anymore. And it's all basically kind of ash and embers. And she just thinks about how, her brother forgave him and like never gave up on him, but how she like never could. And there's a whole lot more that kind of goes into that. And it's been a while since I read it. But I feel like thinking back on like watching that scene and thinking about that scene with Luke and his father, I feel like has so many different layers of symbolism and like meaning behind like everything Star Wars is about. So I feel like that one kind of like stands out to me more in that way. Obviously there's so many scenes that I could list, but yeah.
That's like its whole other podcast.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have so many favorite moments that I'm gonna be annoying and pick 3 and go really fast. I'm so sorry.
Do it.
Go for it.
Moment.
Take your time.
Let's hear it.
2008, when Clone Wars the movie came out and Ahsoka stepped off the ship and said, "Hey, I'm supposed to be your Padawan learner."
Yes.
And me as a 10-year-old at the time was like, "Oh my gosh, a girl who gets to be part of like the like cool Jedi story."
Yes.
And she's like close to my age, but she's older, so she's cool because I'm 10 and she's 14, and that's just like, oh, that's so cool. Like that moment for me was just like, oh my god, I feel seen. Like, I want to have a lightsaber. I want to be her. Like, that's the coolest thing. And obviously, here we are. I can't not cosplay her. I love her. So like that scene just in and of itself. And staying on the Ahsoka like train, I guess. Another scene that really sticks out to me is when she leaves the Jedi Order. When she goes, "Hey, I got to figure this out on my own, without you, without the council." And she says, she has such a good moral code. She has such a good understanding of herself, that she does not need people to tell her what to do. She does not need an older group of people to tell her, "Hey, you should do this. You should do that." She is so like one with the Force and also with herself, that she knows that she doesn't need to be a Jedi. And her going on and saying, "Hey, I am no Jedi," and being able to just walk this path that for others would send them to the dark side or send them into this rigorous like Jedi order, but she can walk that line, it's a beautiful symbolism of really being an independent character that just does her own thing. So
that's kind
that's
of interesting. Like what you just said about how like others would go to the dark side. Like it's kind of like a parallel between like her and Anakin. They were kind of faced with an incredibly similar situation where they're both kind of like not feeling the Jedi Order. They're like, we don't feel like this is right. And you can see where she goes versus where he goes.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
And it's like a scene where you get to no, you're good. It's just like it's where you get to see that like she takes his training and she almost gets to take his training and do it like better, which kind of is Anakin. It's kind of like, look, you trained me to think outside the box, and I'm going to think outside the box, but I'm going to do it in a way that works, And
yes,
I think that's just such a cool testament to her as being such an important character. And then the last thing I'll say, diverting from Ahsoka. So I really like the Republic Commando books, and one of the main characters in the Republic Commando books is Etain, and I really I really enjoyed when I read those books, just the fact that you have this Jedi character. She came out way before Ahsoka, that gets to kind of be, I mean, toe to toe with the boys. She runs around with the commandos. She has a giant gun. She gets to just do whatever she wants. She's got the Force. She's powerful. And she's just, I don't know, she's such an icon. And it's just really cool to see her in the books, in Legends, you know, before you have this Disney takeover, before you have the transition of stories where you get to see a lot more females, which is awesome. But like you still have those cool characters, you still have those amazing female characters back in the day, back in the Legends books.
Yeah.
I mean, I can name a ton of them, but I'm going to point out Etain, that gets to have the cool commando story, that gets to, you know, just be part of those Legends. And so I have to put her in there partially because of the Legends tie of being like, it's not just now that we're getting strong female characters. They've always, they've been there. They've been there since day one, and so it's pretty cool to see those Legends ties butting up to the current Star Wars. So
yeah, I agree. I actually, my mom also mentioned to me some of the books, because she said she bought all the books like growing up, and she told me, which I didn't know this before, so obviously I'm a fake fan, but apparently Han and Leia also had a daughter.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Yeah.
Jason and Gina.
Jaina.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
There
like,
is a Black Series figure of her.
yeah, there was. Oh my god.
Way.
Oh, yes.
see, like, I feel like I'm still learning so much more, because like, even though my mom really loved it, I only still like knew so much because I didn't have many people my age that really liked Star Wars as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, like until I met Colin, really, I'd really only ever seen the movies. Like I didn't really have access to anything else. I didn't really know anything about it. We didn't have like cable growing up or anything, so like I just had movies. So I met him, and he was like, "Oh, you need to watch this show and this show and this show," and I was like, "Whoa!" Started watching it, and I was like, "This is so good!" Like,
Some of the best Star Wars is animated Star Wars.
I
Like,
agree.
without a doubt.
Like Clone Wars and Rebels are just so good.
Like,
Like if you haven't seen them, don't be deterred by the fact that they're animated. Like they're not kiddish, if that makes sense.
Mm-mm.
Like
Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like that's what I thought when I would see it advertised, I think on Netflix,
Yeah.
when I would
Mhm.
babysit
yeah.
and stuff, and I was like, what is this? Like, I didn't know. So I was kind of in the same boat. So I'd never seen it until 2.5 years, 2 years ago.
That's
I feel like one moment that always like stuck out to me was from the Clone Wars with Ahsoka, when she goes from being like a Padawan that was looked after, and she now has to look after the younglings when they went to go like build their lightsabers. She now takes on this mentorship role, and it really shows that like she sort of guides them, and then halfway through that guiding, she's separated from them, and you really get to see like how much like she sort of impacted them to start thinking out of the box and to start like getting very creative and like finding their own way to solve like their problems, and to then get back to her. Like it was just that moment of like showing that like everyone kind of affects everybody in the Star Wars world.
Yeah.
Like everybody has some sort of impact. Every character has something that either another character takes from them or they learn from them. So it's really just that like guidance that everyone sort of experiences. And like as fans, we experience that. Like we see these characters like experiencing it, and so do we. Like we take on these lessons that we learn from them. We take on the stories. So it really is just full circle. It's not just like what we're seeing in the shows. Like it's starting to become part of our world. So seeing it go from like the screen to our lives is just very like, it's a very mirror effect in a way. So that's always what stood out to me, is just the guidance that Star Wars has.
Yeah.
it's like it's the Force, right? Like I love the concept of the Force, that just all living things are just connected in some way, and I just think that that's like so beautiful. And it's just like something that like is translated from the movies and to like real life. Like we're all connected in this way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And that's something, so I'll kind of like transition into another topic of like what Star Wars means to us while I kind of mention this little like tidbit to go off what you said, Brooke. But I was able to go on the Star Cruiser, and that was a place where I really felt that kind of sense of the Force, as we say. I know I've heard people talk about it at cons, they've talked about it at Mosh Isley, and on the podcast those people are part of, like just this community of people that have been brought together by something greater. And I really love that. It was, I know Sai can probably attest to how it kind of felt on that Star Cruiser experience of just like all these people coming together, and you're there for your love of Star Wars. And we were grateful to have a lot of people with us who also really love Star Wars, and I feel like that added to it for sure. But I feel like that kind of sense of community is, at least for me, part of what Star Wars means to me, and I can speak more on that in a little bit. But do other people have like little what Star Wars means to them moments? Really?
To me, it's just it's hope and just like perseverance, like just this idea that even when things are really dark, when you're having a tough time, that there's always hope, and you can always, like, as long as you're, I don't know, you stay strong, you believe in yourself, like you have your community, right?
Mhm.
You can overcome anything. It's just this really like overpowering sense of hope.
Mhm. I think that's why one of my favorite quotes is from what I just said from the Fallen Order, is the hope will always survive in those who continue to fight. It's just because that's basically what Star Wars is to me, at least. It's that hope that you were talking about. And that line like perfectly encapsulates that whole, if you keep
Yes.
going, hope will always be there.
Great.
I love that so many of the character arcs we see are either like redemption arcs, or they're about people coming together, or like Rebels is like found family. And I love that there's all of these like important life lessons that, you know, even adult TV shows really struggle to nail.
Yeah.
But then, you know, you have these like
Yes.
animated shows, and this, you know, predominantly like thought of as kid media that does such a great job of showing, you know, even however far you decide to go to the dark side, whatever your iteration of the dark side is, there's always a way to come back. And whether it's your family or your friends or, you know, your found family, whoever that like brings you back, it's just having that sense of community and being able to like learn those life lessons in a way where you're comfortable. And I think that's just absolutely beautiful that there's a younger generation now that is going to get to experience that, because they're like lessons that really span different generations and different times in your life.
Yeah. I kind of, I don't know, jumping off of what you said, I think Star Wars means to me family, in that, like, you know, the first person that showed me Star Wars was my dad. The person that took me to get my lightsaber was my mom. The person that I cosplay with is my sibling. Like, I have this, and then like in the community, I feel like I found family. Like, I have people I go to cons with regularly. I have people I go and I, you know, party with as a carrot. You know, like I have a good time with these people who all have connected over Star Wars as this. Yes, you know, it's a medium of, you know, connection, but it's also it's a fantastical world where you get to explore what it means to be, you know, what if we were Jedi? What if we were, you know, in a fantastical world where we could all like explore the galaxy? And in that way, kind of like what you said, Hannah, like, I wish I could have gone on Star Cruiser. I couldn't, but it's like, what if we did get to explore the galaxy? What if we did get to go on a Star Cruiser? What if we did get to, you know, save the world? And it kind of teaches you these lessons that you get to take into the real world and say, hey, I have this found family. I have my real family. I have me. And I have all of these lessons from all of these people, whether it's about twins or about, you know, your chosen family in Rebels, that it teaches you how to interact with your people that you choose. It teaches you how to really connect with the world in a deeper way. That, like, here's how you treat family. Here's how you solve problems as family. Here's how you forgive your family. And I think that is just especially in, like, I don't know, in ways, like, especially for kids, for adults, for anyone, you always have to learn how to, how to facilitate, like, a good family, whether it's with a friend family or a family. You have to learn how to have those interactions. And I feel like it's a really good way to teach kids. It's a really good way to teach adults. I mean, I feel like I've learned stuff from it. And so I think it means family to me, and even, like, so many of the books are about family. Like, you read the young Boba Fett books, you read Republic Commando. It's all the underlying theme of these books is family. My perspective, but it's all about family to me.
Yeah.
I feel like it really is, like, for me, I just see creativity through Star Wars, whether it's the creation of all the different worlds and planets we get to see, the creation of new characters.
Yeah.
It's also just the creativity that the community has around it. Whether, like, you see people making their own stories, like, spanning off the universe. You see people making their costumes. You see people making armor. Like, and I love seeing custom. I love seeing these custom Jedis. I love seeing custom Mandalorians.
Yeah.
It truly is just this wonderful creative outlet where you don't really have anything that's, like, stopping you. It's space. There's so much and they're always expanding it. So it's ever growing creativity of just a creative world that we get to, like, play in. That's what I love as viewers. We get to explore it. We get to find new things about it that we love. It's just so much. And finding the people through the creative aspect of it, finding the people who are creative just like you are always going to have someone to relate to when it comes to just that little creative spark that Star Wars gives. It's
Yeah.
much fun.
Yeah. I feel like my answer really goes off of what both Star and Jillian were saying, that Star Wars is wonderment and family and believing in yourself. That's something that I feel like is also a big theme, underlying theme, whether it's in your face or, kind of hidden in the message, is believing in yourself and believing in something that connects everyone.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about, like Star said, family, community, having something that brings you together to be kind, to think of others before thinking of yourself all the time. Those different themes, I feel like, kind of, I don't know, make you good or balanced, I guess, is probably a better way to say it, because I don't think that Star Wars is all about being just good. I feel like it's really a balance between the two parts of everyone, the good and the bad, the dark, the light, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like those things are what Star Wars mean to me. And just like Jillian said, having fun with it and being creative and having just a whole community behind you and just having fun.
Yeah, and, like, what a diverse community of people that I don't know if I'd ever get to, like, meet you guys if it wasn't for Star Wars, right? Like, this is such a, like, massive community of people from different states, different countries, different religions, different ethnicities, different genders. Like, it's just something that, it's like a one, like, vantage point that really lets you experience everyone else's story, and all of their stories are, just as important, and they do influence yours. And it's, like, all coming together, and it just, like, kind of like what we were saying, where Ahsoka has to go and have her own story and has to have that courage to know that her own values matter, but still taking in what the rest of the Jedi and rest of the people that she's meeting. It kind of tells you to do the same thing, where you kind of take what you can from all of the people around you that you met through this community.
It's almost like, kind of for both of you, what you guys just said, Star Wars is chocked full of coming of age stories. Like, you have this Ahsoka coming of age. She goes through her Padawan training and learns there's something more that the Jedi doesn't offer her. And she comes of age. Ezra, coming of age story. Luke, coming of age story. Like, all of these characters have, Sabine, they all have these very robust coming of age stories. Rey has one where it's just, you're learning not just what Hannah was saying, not just the flat up light side, but also like what are the ways of the smugglers and the bounty hunters? What is the way to like take care of your family? What about the dark side? And you're learning all these things, and it really is a fandom that teaches you how to grow. And almost every story, Anakin's story in the prequels, I mean, they all have to do with this. How do you grow up? How do you learn? How do you come of age into a galaxy or a world that you then need to find your community, you need to find your family, you need to find your morals, all of these things. And I think it teaches you, like Sai was saying, to go out and explore things that maybe you wouldn't otherwise. Things would you maybe not see otherwise. And it really challenges you to just think about like, hey, well, I've never thought about going there, or I've never thought about talking to that set of people, or I've never thought about going to a con in that state, or I've never thought and you go and you do things. I've never thought about building armor or starting a sewing project or doing these things that are outside my comfort zone, because you yourself are following along the Star Wars track of coming of age, of hey, what are some things I didn't know? Let me try those, and that's a really beautiful aspect of Star Wars.
Yeah. I think as you were talking, I was thinking about cosplay, and especially in the last 2 years, I was going through grad school and then I moved to a different state, and cosplaying along with like Star Wars stuff, because obviously that's most of what I do. I feel like I've learned so much about myself and how to build things, which I never thought I could do. Granted, I get a lot of like guidance, but
no, you're amazing.
Everyone does, right?
Yeah,
that's how
I have learned so much, and I feel like I have also learned, like you said, how to do things I wouldn't have done and go places I wouldn't have gone, and it's just such a incredible world. And like Sai said, or I forget if it was Sai or Jillian, sorry, but like I would not know like any of you if I wasn't this into Star Wars, and I feel like I'm really grateful for that. And also to add on to that, from what Jillian had said, I forgot the world building. I feel like I appreciate so much as someone who reads a lot too. Seeing like the different creatures, the droids, the worlds, the way people operate on those worlds is just so cool, especially as it keeps expanding.
Such a fantastic sandbox, like, with all of the different aliens that you get to meet, all of the different kind of personalities. And it does go back to the cosplay where, one of the things I love about specifically Star Wars cosplayers is just the we'll get it done kind of mentality. Like, it's one of those fandoms where like I can go and say, I have zero idea how I'm going to make a Twi'lek, but I'll get it done. I'll find one, right? Like I've never seen leather before, but I need a leather belt with pouches. I'll get it done. We'll find a way. And I absolutely love that about the cosplay community as a whole. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we have such a fantastic sandbox to play in, that if, they're able to have artists who draw these interesting characters and who write these interesting storylines, then we as the people consuming the media are able to go, you know what, I could do the same thing. I can also challenge myself.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's one of the main reasons I love the video games so much, because like the world building, yes, you're seeing everything as you're going through the story, but since you're playing a game, you can stop and go look around.
Yes.
And they've hidden all these little things for you to find just so you can be there. And I just love that so much, because like, yes, you can watch the shows and the movies and read the books and the comics, but you don't get to go wherever you want and look at whatever you want. You look at what they give you, and that's it. So I think that's why I really loved the games, especially, and I connect well with the games, especially because I can go and look at whatever for as long as I want. It's like going to Disney and sitting in Batuu for like 5 hours.
Yes.
It's a good time.
It's
Yeah.
a buffet.
Yes,
Star Wars
it
is
is.
just a buffet where you're building like your plate of what you want to see, what
Mhm.
you want to watch, like what you want to make. Like with lightsaber building, you are picking the parts you want.
Yeah.
You are choosing like the path of or the buffet of Star Wars that you want to enjoy. Whether it's you want to enjoy the books, you want to enjoy some of the shows, the video games. There's like the extended lore to it. There's so
Yeah.
much. And everyone gets so creative with what it is they want to like deep dive into. And that's another great thing about it. It's just you can find one thing and like spiral into it and find so much passion for it. And
Yeah.
that's what's really great is seeing what people are really passionate about and
Yeah.
how I've seen it like take people who are very like sort of like closed off and like when they find that one thing that they are passionate about, they break out of their shell like nothing I've ever seen before. And you see just that joy that they have. And it can be over like little niche things from a droid to a little blue musician you can find. Like I wasn't gonna go this episode without bringing it up.
Lasted 45 minutes.
Oh
Man.
my gosh. You really thought that because Colin wasn't on here, you weren't gonna see that guy, but he
there he
still made
is.
it.
He's
Max.
always here.
Hey, Brooke, Max Rubo is behind you. Okay,
Yeah, he's right there.
always here. He's always here.
He's always watching.
Oh, always,
Yeah.
always.
So true.
He's like Roz, you know, from Monsters
Yes.
Inc. Like, he's always watching.
It's that moment of just like joy that just sparks just from that one little thing. You find that passion and you find those giant moments it just like erupts in joy. And that's what's so special about Star Wars. It brings so much of that to so many people and it's infectious. It truly is infectious.
Yeah.
No, I
That
agree.
was one
And
of
I
the
also
most fantastic things about like the Star Cruiser is and I know it's gone, I'm really sorry to bring it up, but it's just like you would go on this trip with a bunch of people who loved and cared about it just as much as you did. And I don't think there was ever any sort of person that thought no matter what you were doing or what you did for this trip that you were doing too much. Like whether you had full body face paint, you were not doing too much. Whether you bedazzled a droid, you were not doing too much. You know, whether or not you decided to bring an entire group of aliens onto this ship in the middle of Florida, like you were not doing too much. Like everyone was so excited to see you be passionate and they were just as passionate around you. And it's such a wonderful energy that like unfortunately we don't get to see that a lot in our adult lives. And it was just a wonderful trip to be on. And cons are like that as well, which is just it's a great place to be.
Yeah.
That's so true. Like in our adult lives, we don't get to see that as much. That's so true. That's one of the things that I love about Star Wars. I just love like any little person getting passionate about it. Like I don't care what it is. Talk to me about it. I want to hear about it. I love that. I think that's so amazing.
like for me at least, that's also taken me to be able to do that a little bit better with my real life, as you call it. Like, so Star Wars taught me to be able to look at things and passionately be like, oh my gosh, I love this. I'm gonna unashamedly just love this tiny niche thing of Star Wars that I do. And I found that that's helped me get confidence in my like other aspects of my life, whether it's my work or like my other hobbies or with my family, where it's like Star Wars teaches you lessons that you then can take into other aspects of your life and be like, hey, I like exploring these different cultures in Star Wars. I want to explore them in real life. I like to go and travel new places for cons. What if I looked other places? And it's like, it gives you tools to just like, yes, look at the Star Wars world, but then also to be like, hey, I like that character does this. I want to try to do that too. What if I implemented that in my work life? What if I implemented that in my other hobbies? You know, and it even like cosplay, like what you were saying, Hannah, someone, I don't know, we were all talking anyway, about like learning so many new things in cosplay and being able to be like, hey, I never thought I could build this. What if I could try to establish something new somewhere else? And like, I think that Star Wars cosplay, the whole community has taught me not just to find it in Star Wars, but to take those things I learned in Star Wars and put them into other aspects of my life.
Mhm.
into my work, put them into my other hobbies, put them into my family, and be able to use those tools to be like, wow, I can find so much more beauty in other things, not just Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it teaches you lessons that you can take with you. And I think that is another beautiful thing about Star Wars. You know, it doesn't stop there. You get to take that to your galaxy.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that. Your
Because
galaxy.
like if you think about it, like I feel like as we grow up, right, like
Mhm.
being passionate about things, sometimes people kind of think it's childish. So like I feel like as we grow up, a lot of people kind of like stop getting super excited about those kind of things, but
Yeah.
like not the Star Wars community, which is one of the
Mhm.
things I really love about it, is that you've got adults who are dressing up, for lack of a better term, you're cosplaying, you're like doing all these things that a lot of other people are like, isn't that kind of childish? You're like, no, why? Like, why does that need to be childish? I'm
Yeah.
passionate about it, I love it, like I'm gonna do it, and I am having a good time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and like as we, get older, another thing we definitely lose is just like the idea that we can do new things. Like I know a lot of people are just like,
Mhm.
I'm an adult, I could never learn piano at this point, or like I could never take
Right.
ballet. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
getting into cosplay, I've never built a droid before, but I'm still gonna give it a
Mhm.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone on
Exactly.
this call at some point was probably like, I've never sewed something from scratch, or I've never, 3D modeled something. I've never learned to print. But even as adults, we're like, we can do that. Like we can learn
Yes.
new things even at this age.
Yeah.
And like you have this amazing community that's like encouraging you
Yeah.
to do
Mhm.
so.
And
Yeah.
it's going to help
Mhm.
you. And like, if you have
Yeah.
questions, someone has an answer, or someone will help you find an answer. Like we are all like, I feel like a bunch of us, we are going to be learning about engineering, robotics, 3D printing.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
so much that those are skills that maybe if it weren't for Star Wars, I wouldn't be striving to like
Yeah.
go learn about robotics and like how to go make a droid. Like
Mhm.
these are crazy skills that like when people are like, wait a minute, you're building robots? And it's like, yeah, I'm building a droid. It's like, why not throw that on the resume? So
Yeah.
it's all these amazing life skills that
Yeah.
because of Star Wars, we're bringing into, like our adult life, like our jobs, and they
Yeah.
can implement into our jobs as well.
There's
Yeah.
always a joke that goes around saying that Star Wars, like the community, like a bunch of enablers. And one of my biggest mistakes, not an actual mistake, but like a mistake, was telling Hunter, who's in the chat, oh, I kind of want to build a BD unit. And he was like, yeah, yeah, you're doing that now. I was like,
Tell me
oh,
about it.
I can't. And he's like, no, you're doing that now. You're doing that now. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm doing that now.
Mhm.
When? Who knows? But I'm doing it.
But you are.
We'll make sure you do it too.
Oh, yes, you will.
Yeah,
There's,
the
like,
community
some
is
guy out
very
there who-
enabling.
Who like definitely learned to play a musical instrument for a Max Rebo cosplay. I don't know who he is, but there's someone out there who in their adult life was like, I'm gonna learn an instrument for cosplay. And I like that that's just like a completely believable thing that has happened in this community.
That guy right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I taught myself Arabesh because I was sick and tired of like being in Galaxy's Edge and
Yeah.
not being able to know what anything says. I was like, I want to know what this says. I
Mhm.
made flashcards
Yes.
and it took me like a week and I knew it. And now it's like one of my favorite things is Colin will be like, what does this say? And I'll be like, oh, it's this. And I just know it.
Mhm.
Right?
You learned a new language as an
I
adult.
did. I
Ready
did.
for
I
the smart
actually, fun fact, we were doing an escape room in Orlando and like we were just doing about the thing and someone had found this little message and they were like, oh, haha, this kind of looks like the Star Wars language. And like I looked at it and I was like, it is. I can read it. And we skipped an entire section of the escape room because I could read the code without the decoder wherever it was.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
Perfect. That's
I felt real cool.
that's some queen stuff right
Yeah.
I
there.
can tell you they were watching your room like on the cameras, like
Yeah, I think they said only like one other person ever had they seen be able to do that. I was like,
Gosh.
I love that.
I did that with Mandoa. I like put a bunch of sticky notes of like the Mandoa words for everything around my house and like learned Mandoa and I was like, I
Yes.
must know this language.
amazing.
That's sick too.
Yeah, but
I love
even,
that.
like, on that and like learning new skills and stuff, I was gonna say like the stuff you would never think to try. Like recently tried building a clone And like it was so fun, like bringing it back to like kind of women in the community and building things. Like me and Hannah were kind of building clones at the same time. And it was really fun to like text Hannah and be like, oh my god, I don't know how to sand this. I don't know what to do, because they're designed for 6'2"
Something.
men
Yeah.
bodies.
Mhm.
And
Uh-huh.
me and Hannah are not 6'2" men. And so it's really fun to like have yeah, believe it or not, actually crazy.
What?
But, like it's
Yeah.
I feel bamboozled.
you do get to have this community and this learning aspect of like, hey, there's other women who are trying to do the same thing I'm trying to do. We're learning different, like trial and error. How do we do this? What are we doing? You know, type situation. And that was a really fun part of the learning process, and a really fun part of like, hey, I never would have thought that I could do this. Like starting cosplaying in 2021, I never would have thought like, hey, I should try to build a clone. You know, like seeing Hannah do it, I was like, well, I should try too. I mean, like we can do it. You know?
I always tell people that if I can do it, so can you. And because it really is such a difficult process. And to go off of what you said, yeah, it's built for like a man's body, quote unquote, who's, I think the shortest it's supposed to fit is close to 6 foot.
Yeah.
And I consider myself someone who's like has slightly more broad shoulders. I don't know. And I still had to cut my armor way down.
Yeah.
Like the amount I had to cut off of it is almost laughable. I call my chest plate like the Frankenstein part of my costume because I had to cut it in 4 different pieces and bring it back together. So I think that's something else that is kind of coming more to light in the cosplay Star Wars community too, is that we want to have more things shaped / sized for women or people who are smaller in general. Like that would definitely be more helpful. And just accessible and less time consuming, let me tell you.
But in
That
the
being
meantime,
said,
we will
Hannah-
be hacking at them with Dremels.
Yeah, that you get stuck in your hair. Like
I remember
that was very
We all just took a moment to wince. We all just took a moment to just like wince at just the idea.
yeah. But
like-
I also want to take that like kind of everything that we've been learning and kind of point it in the direction of the topic of this podcast, I would guess I would say, or overall topic, and ask, what have the women of Star Wars taught you? And why do you feel like it's important to have this representation? It's a tough question.
It's a very loaded question.
It is because I feel like there's so many things that we can learn. I mean, we've talked about Ahsoka and how many things we've all learned from her and how much wisdom she can give you for your everyday life. I know one of the first things I always think of when I was rewatching whenever I was 10, kind of rediscovering Star Wars, was Leia and how she just like immediately kicks butt, is not afraid of Darth Vader, and just kind of does her thing without apologizing for it and without saying that, you know, she's sorry or anything like that. I've always loved her, and that's definitely one of the biggest reasons why I love her. And I think that is something that I like to think about a lot. So I feel like she's definitely someone that I've learned from for sure, along with Ahsoka, obviously. But I think that was kind of like my first viewing kind of gave me that. But
yeah, I agree.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that I agree with Leia. Leia was probably like my first, maybe ever, character that I've like watched ever, of being like, I'm gonna do what I'm doing. I don't care what you have to say about it. I don't care if you think I can't do it. And so that was really important to me growing up. And even when I started watching the prequels, when they started coming out, obviously, seeing Padme, because people would not listen to Padme,
Mm-mm.
and then she would be correct.
Mhm.
Shocking, I
Rude.
know.
Always.
So
Always.
shocking. Which is, I know a lot of people here can relate to that, and it's just kind of like, huh. Well, at least I can see that it also happens to one of the most influential people of the galaxy. So it's like, in that way, it kind of instills hope. It's just like, okay, even if people aren't going to listen to you, they're going to see that you're correct, and then you're correct. Well, it's just like, just don't listen to anyone else. If they want to be wrong, they can be wrong. And you just got to keep doing what you're doing and just not listen to people telling you that you're wrong. Unless you are wrong, then like listen to them. But you know what I mean. Like, do what you got to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
think
like that.
I think like, you know, on the topic of like why it's important to have female representation in Star Wars is probably the same reason it's important to have female representation in everything.
Mhm.
It's that females make up, you know, 50% of the planet. And like, sorry to like pull in that, but like, it's that, you know, when you have pretty much anything, men and women, 50%, right? And so having female representation in, you know, a fandom is important when, you know, you've got people across the globe who know this franchise. They know the stories from the 70s. They know the stories from the 2000s. They know everything that's coming out now. It's important to have female representation because not just for females, but like for everyone to be able to see, like, look, hey, in a whole galaxy, in this whole fictional galaxy, there's just as many men as there are women. And I'm not saying that on a character basis, but on a basis of having characters that you can connect with, characters that you can like view their story in. You know, it's important to have that representation so you can watch strong female characters, weak female characters, passionate female characters, bad female characters, everything, the whole range. You need the whole range of female characters so that you can see that, you know, just like men, just like anyone, women can span. They can be bad guys. They can be good guys. They can be sleazy. They can be cool. They can be, you know, smugglers. They can be anything, because that's the point. It's not that women have to be, you know, the most amazing characters ever. It's that they're just like anyone else, you know, and I think that's why representation and having a smattering of female characters is so important, is because you need to be able to see that you don't get relegated to one position or relegated to one area. And that's what, like, you know, Leia taught you can be part of the resistance. You know, Padme taught you can be part of the government and make a change. And Ahsoka taught you can be a fighter, you know, and it's like, that's why those characters are so important, is that they teach you don't have to just find yourself in one area. You know, it's 50-50. You know, you can find yourself in so many different positions. And I think that's why representation is important, is that for little girls like me, who is 4 years old, going to pick out my lightsaber, you know, I don't have to just think to myself, oh my goodness, I need to go, I don't know, whatever it is. I can pick out a lightsaber, I can pick out a dress, I can pick out a smuggler's gun, I can pick out whatever I want. And that's something that's really nice about Star Wars, is that as a female, in the Legends book, in the old canon and the new canon and whatever you want to find, there are female characters everywhere. And that's why representation is so important for like kids my age and kids younger than me, kids older than me, whatever, you know. So
Yeah, like I feel like a character that or like a woman in Star Wars that I love to look towards is Hera.
Yeah.
She has such a wide like scheme of everything that she can do and everything she wanted to do and everything she's done, whether it's being a pilot, whether it's being not just a mom but a mother figure to the entire crew. She is able to be there for patience, for motivation, for just that extra drive. She is able to prove you can start somewhere, and if you have that goal and have that determination and follow through, it can be executed. It can be done. She just shows, because we get to meet younger Hera in the Bad Batch, and which I thought was such a treat to get to see I always love when we get to see younger versions, because then the world expands so much. So getting to see younger Hera dreaming of being a pilot too, like, because when we first meet her, that's what we see. We see the pilot in her. And as we go on Hera's story, we see her experience love. We see her experience loss. And we see these like women characters go through things that we go through as well. We go through the same things. It really is sometimes so nice to be able to relate to it, to be like, okay, well, this character who I looked up to got through this, or if the show's going on, they're going through this, well, maybe you are as well. So being able to learn with them, learn from them, it's such a memorable experience. And I just love Hera because you got to see her go through like being at the top of the world to literally losing what she thought was everything. And then she finds it again. She'll find her family. She'll find what she loves. And so I will always put Hera up there as such a motivational character.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And I think something I was thinking of while you were talking, Jillian, and you, Star, I was thinking a lot about Mon Mothma and her role in Andor.
Yeah.
And just the political games and everything that she plays, how strategic she thinks. Just that was one of the things I thought about earlier today when I was thinking about this podcast. And I feel like she's one of those people who, you know, she's not a Jedi. She's not, you know, in the action of the fighting or anything, but she is still just as powerful playing the game. And she learned how to play the game. And I always love seeing women in those roles just like outsmart everyone else. Like it's just the best. You know, I got that same feeling in like other shows or movies that I've watched. And I think that that's such a great thing to see because not everyone is a fighter. Not everyone is, you know, I guess a Jedi is still a fighter, but you know, like kind of have like all the different ranges, like Star was saying, just of everything. And I think that that's so wonderful to see. Yeah. Like that.
Yeah, I think
and like at its core, it's just kind of ridiculous to like have this idea that like, oh, this is a guy's thing, so we don't need to have women in it at all. Like, I think there are very few things in this world that is like specifically a guy or girl thing. Like, like what do you mean? Like who? Like Star Wars was not marketed towards men only. Like why
like children?
Exactly. Like who got it in their heads that women can't be in it just because it's a guy's thing? Like no one ever said that. Like it's just like we've said, it's pretty much 50% you've got men, 50% women. Like that's just how the world is.
Yeah.
Why would there be less in this galaxy? Maybe they have different statistics than we do. I don't know, but I doubt it.
You want like a good story. It's like a community you care about. Like if you're someone who really does care about Star Wars, like what legitimate reason would you have to want to limit the perspective to only being a male one? Like, is there really any positive to that? Like, isn't it always better to have more? Don't you want to show, you know, more female characters? Don't you want to show more female perspectives? Don't you just want to have more characters in general that are dynamic and interesting and have backstories and a range of life? And in order to make it like a legacy kind of show, like something that is long lasting, you're going to need to include all of these different stories. And you should want to include all these stories because it is such a fantastic sandbox that like me getting a story or Riley getting a story or anyone else here finding a character that they can relate to isn't going to take away from any of the characters you maybe relate to. Like it really just doesn't make any sense to feel like it is an attack that there is more female representation. It should be a positive thing. And if you're someone who likes the community and you like Star Wars, you should find a way to be happy about it because it's ultimately just better for Star Wars as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And going back to
Oh, sorry. Oh,
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and just because like a character is male or female, like doesn't mean that only males or females are going to connect to this character.
yeah.
Like I've had so many
Mhm.
amazing conversations with people who identify with Ahsoka, male and female.
Yeah.
And like
Mhm.
with a bunch of other characters too. Like there's no law that says that like, oh, I'm a girl,
No.
so I can only identify with female characters. Like
Mhm.
that's not a thing either.
Brooke, I was about to actually say pretty much the same thing. but-
Really?
yeah, I was just saying, like, you know, it's such a like, it's also such like, okay, not to be that person, but it's kind of an archaic idea that
It's very binary.
men only identify with men and females only
Mhm.
identify
Yeah.
with females. Like the idea that like I have a lot of male characters in Star Wars that I love, that I identify
Yes.
with. Like just
Mhm.
because I want female perspectives doesn't mean I don't identify with the men, right? Like a lot of my
Mhm.
cosplays are male characters, which is how it is. And it's like
Mhm.
I like them. Hannah has male cosplays as well. Like that's just like what you do. Like you find characters who your story resonates with, and like limiting the idea to, oh my gosh, we shouldn't have more female characters. Like that doesn't just limit females. That also just limits the range of stories you can have.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what you were saying, Brooke. And I'm just jumping off of that basically. And
Mhm.
it goes back to exactly what I said and what everyone else echoed earlier, just like it's 50% of the planet. You know, when you have a universe of species, 50% is going to be female, and that's just honestly not to be that person, but like it's realistic. Okay, you want to
Mhm.
have 50% male, 50% female. That's realistic. That's what we have now. So like,
Yeah.
you know, to have more female perspectives is not a it's not a problem. If you don't like it, that's okay. Like watch something else. That's fine. Like you can
Mhm.
identify with
Right?
the other stories. You can identify with, like that's the nice thing about Star Wars. Identify with what you want to identify with. If you want to watch only The Mandalorian, go for it. If you want to watch only Ahsoka, go for it. Like, you know, Star Wars has something for everyone. It is for everyone. And so, you know, choosing like a storyline that really resonates with you is like what you should do. So like if you
Mhm.
don't identify with a certain story, that's okay. You know, that's fine. But having that diversity of ones that you can possibly pick from is a positive. Pretty much any way you spin it. So
Yeah. I feel like that when you were saying, you know, you limit the stories you can tell, one of the things I thought of kind of right away, and I'm not really sure why, but it's the first thing that popped in my head, was in Andor, I was thinking of her name earlier, and the
Nick?
officer's name, but the officer
Mm-hmm.
who goes home to his mom. I'm totally blanking on their names.
Oh,
right now.
Cyril. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. His mom. Like if
Yeah.
she hadn't pushed him to do certain things and acted how she did, she's such an interesting character.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, and without her, the story would be different. Same with Marva and her whole speech that, you know,
Oh,
B2
yeah.
kind of shows. Like, that's also one of my favorite moments. And
Yes.
I feel like without those characters, things would have been so much more different.
I will say it's like lately hearing that, not lately, because it's been for the past at least several years to my knowledge, the pushback of like, oh, we don't need more female characters because then it's not Star Wars. That has always been very confusing to me because there have always been female characters and they aren't background characters. And for them to say, oh, well, it's not Star Wars, it's just like, do you know who George Lucas is as a person?
Yeah.
That man, that way of thinking is not at all what George Lucas was. And
Yeah.
even like now that George isn't in control, but even when George had it, that's never been the type of person
No.
he was.
Mhm.
So like this whole idea of like, well, we can't keep having these lead female characters or blah 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 because then it's not Star Wars. That it's like, where did this come from? Do you know what I mean? I just don't understand
Yeah.
because it's just
Something
always
is
been
like-
here.
It's such a disingenuous statement to begin with. Like it's one
Mhm.
of those statements where it's you don't even want to have the argument or the discussion or even just like a back and forth because just the basis of the statement is just argumentative to begin with. Like, what do you mean you don't need more female characters? No one
Right.
said that you were being forced to. Nobody is holding like, you know, a gun to your head and making you write these stories. They're good stories. You
Mhm.
should want to tell them. Like, you should want to include this new perspective. It's an entire galaxy, and you're saying that you're being forced to write this particular story from this particular perspective to include this exact, like, that's not what's happening here. There's more and more people getting into Star Wars, and those people deserve to have, you know, stories told that are well written, well thought out, and dynamic and long lasting, and that are, you know, applicable to any and all age groups, genders, everything. It's
Yeah.
not a need, it should be a want. You should want to have this.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like that kind of brings in like wanting people who look like you, I guess. I feel like
Yeah.
that could be kind of like an important thing as well, is like not just like male, female representation, but also just different people in general.
Mhm.
I feel like Star Wars does a pretty like decent job at that.
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone really complain about it, but I think that's something to think about.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, we're talking about a galaxy that's filled with so many different creatures, whether they're human looking or, you know, they're Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
You know, the expanse is just so great. And I think that's part of what makes it really cool, is all of these species interact with each other. And I think that that is also a good, you know, thing to see for people,
Yeah.
is that no matter what you look like, you can be part of something greater.
Mhm.
Well, I think that goes back to just the idea of representation as a whole, of just saying that, you know, when you see someone as a like, especially as a child, right? Like, I'm thinking about me as a kid, or like anyone as a kid. When you see someone as a kid that looks like you go, "Hey, look, it's me. I could do this thing." And so it's important to have characters that look like people, that act like people, that have a diversity of ranges, so that all of the little kids, and I'm thinking like young here, watch a show and they don't go, "Oh wow, I'm only the character that, you know, is the bad guy," or like, "I'm only the character that like doesn't really do anything," but that you can go, "Oh, I have different characters and I can identify with." And of course you can identify with any characters you want, even if they don't look like you. But it's an easy jump. It's an easy thing for kids' brains to be able to see something and go, "Wow, that could be me. I have blonde hair. That's me. I have brown hair. That's me." You know, like kids make that jump. They just do. And so it's like, that's why it's important to have things, different races, different genders, different, I mean, anything, to just be like, oh, different personalities, different situations in life. That's why it's important to be like, wow, look, that character is like that. And, you know, and that's just true regardless of, you know, what way you want to splice representation, whether that's race, whether that's gender, whatever, you know, that's why it's important, you know?
Yeah, like you can identify with, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna, like, really quick, like, you can identify with, you know, creatures in Star Wars, with the human looking people in Star Wars, whatever you want to say, like any aliens. I guess they're technically all aliens to us, right? But yeah. And so I like that sentiment, Star.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also not just about like you as an individual person identifying with what you see on screen, but it's also like, we were just talking about how Star Wars teaches us all of these different lessons that we can take through our lives. Is it not just as equally important to teach younger kids that, you know, good and evil can come in all different phenotypic forms? Like, is, you know, like, one of the things that I really liked that we saw is that not all of the bad guys look alike and not all of the good guys look alike. And, you know, not all Wookiees are good, not all Wookiees are bad. And it's just, isn't that like an important lesson that we want to teach the people who are watching, along with all of these other lessons that we learn? Is that, you know, we want to show a wide range of stories. And an important part of that, you know, just from a storytelling perspective, just to keep things interesting and not predictable, is that you need to be able to show that different people can have different stories even if they look the same or different, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
that is, there are some stories
Yeah.
that maybe you can only tell from a specific lens, and that's totally fair. Like they talk about that in the Thrawn books, but like there's also some stories that are just applicable to everyone, and that is such an interesting take that you can really show in this sandbox to the entire audience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
To Star's point, it's just like it's very minuscule, but just kind of to show just the smallest things that kids will grab onto. When I was watching the prequels growing up, just the smallest, most minuscule thing, but it stuck out to me when I was watching. Like growing up, I'm used to all the actresses in like shows and movies having very like straight hair. And so whenever they'd show the scenes of Padme with her natural hair and it was just like very curly, that's what I immediately locked onto. Like it
Yeah.
matters very little, but it's just like seeing someone, oh, that person doesn't have straight hair. That their hair is kind of like my hair. It's like very small thing, but kids will just lock on to anything. And that's why it's very important to have even the smallest resemblance of like familiarity in media, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, like I was big on Disney growing up, and you know, a lot of the earlier ones, they were blonde, blue eyes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so like Leia, brown eyes, brown hair, and a lot of the Star Wars women actually, like that was just
Mhm.
like for me
Yeah.
as a kid, like again, very small, but like for me, for my kid brain, I was like, oh, I see myself in these people. Like it was important to me because like I was not blonde and I did not have blue eyes, but I saw it everywhere.
Mhm.
That's
Well,
very fair. It's a good
And even
point.
like, tiny bit, like I got representation in a lot of things, having very blonde hair, very blue eyes. But even seeing Ahsoka, like, oh my gosh, she has blue eyes. I do too. How cool. Like just like that.
Uh-huh.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I
And like
agree.
I think as a kid, like you've all said, kids, everybody, they latch on to something that they see as familiar. And they get to follow that storyline, and that's so fun for them. And that's something, and I think Star Wars has done a great job with that. You've got people, aliens, humans, whatever, Jedi, everything. You've got so many storylines to follow. They followed so many different ranges of storylines and backgrounds and everything that you can find something. You can find something in anyone, and it doesn't have to be someone that looks like you. It can be someone who looks
No.
completely different.
Yeah.
But that is an aspect that plays into how you feel, especially as a kid, how you can identify with people. And I think that's something really special.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
because just want to say, like, it doesn't necessarily matter like what a character looks like for people to be able to identify with them. It
Yeah.
really
Mhm.
doesn't.
Yeah.
But just it is important to have that diversity and to show a bunch of different people.
Yes.
Doesn't matter for people to identify with them. They don't have to look exactly like them. Like I don't look exactly like anyone in Star Wars, but I can still identify with them.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
inclusion and just a wide representation of people in general is just important just because that's life. Like
Yep.
you're
Mhm.
going to see a wide range of people, male,
Yeah.
female, whatever, in your daily life. And so if you're not comfortable with seeing that in a show, I don't know what to tell you because that's life.
Mhm.
To bounce off that, it's not going to stop. It's going
No.
to be there. There
No.
will be women in Star Wars. They will continue to write women in Star Wars because it is such an important. It's so important to have women there. It's so important to have everybody there. Just
Yeah.
all just a vast array of different people, of different genders, different
Mhm.
species. It's so prominent and it's not stopping whatsoever on any point. So whenever people are like, oh, they need to stop, it's like, well, they're not. So buckle in because you're in for a very long ride. So you can either sit back, relax, and enjoy it, or you just sit back and relax because you're going to be here for a long time.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, going back to kind of like the point of why we kind of started this episode or
Mhm.
wanted to do it was because we hear these things all the time. This isn't something like new. It's not something every single person says. It's not something that, everyone believes or whatever. We decided to do this because there was this viral audio, and these are things that we have heard in the past from people not believing that we like something or not wanting certain things to be put in Star Wars or even any other media. So I think kind of a good thing to kind of come back to is that like main idea that, it's not that, we're trying to push some agenda or something, but we thought that it was an important thing to talk about and just kind of
Like,
express
I think there's
our love.
yeah, like I feel like some people just have this idea that like putting women in it is that there eventually just aren't going to be any men or something. Like we're like we just want
just get them
there
out,
should be this, there's going to be both. So like just I don't know, suck it up. I don't know.
like relax. What's the problem? Calm down.
Like, what's the big deal?
It doesn't take away from your story just because we've added someone else's to the mix. Like, it is an entire universe, and there's a conversation happening in the and there's something that I just maybe want to, it's a very I understand like why someone would feel that, you should be able to see yourself in any character regardless of how they look like, and I get that, like but that's also speaking from a perspective of someone who just doesn't see people that look like her in a lot of media. I do identify with a lot of characters. Like, I definitely identify with Hera, and I don't have Leku, and I'm not green, but at the same time that doesn't change the fact that I didn't get really, really excited when I found out that Indira Varma was going to be in the Obi-Wan show, right? Like, as someone who is a part of the community, it is just always uplifting, and it makes me feel like I am included and seen as a member of the community when you show people that look like me on the screen. Their stories aren't anything like mine, and I just really didn't identify with her character in the show, but that doesn't change the fact that I was happy to see it on screen. It's an entire galaxy. You should be able to show this diversity of people without it taking away from the fact that it's Star Wars as a whole. Like, it's a lesson you want to teach everyone who is watching. At the same time, it is also just a nice thing to do for the community, because the community is not a monolith.
Yes.
Yeah, and that is true. Like, I identify with many people in Star Wars, male, female, anything. Like, I've cosplayed guys, I've cosplayed girls. Like, it doesn't matter.
You do a fantastic job.
Thank you. And many other things. And so, like, to me, I probably identify with just as many men as I do women in Star Wars. And it still matters in media that people are okay when they see, like, let's be honest, the world has a plethora of casting talent. You have casting talent around the world, and when you have the chance to cast someone who looks a little different than someone else, it's really nice for people to see, hey, look, that looks like me. And that's okay. You've got a bunch of choices, and that doesn't mean you have to make that choice. It doesn't mean you need to, but what we're kind of pointing out here is that we see that, and that's important, and that's cool, especially for kids growing up and being able to say, hey, that's cool. It doesn't mean you have to identify with that person. Like Sai said, it doesn't mean that you need to. It doesn't mean that that's the only person you can. It just means that that's something that's an extra, a nice thing that Star Wars has done a really good job at making so many shows, so many movies, so many video games, so many books, where there's so many people, there's so many characters that you can, gender, race, whatever, that you can find a story that fits you. And so it's not that that's the only thing you can do, but it is a nice benefit. Yeah.
And it's not about any kind of agenda being pushed. It's just about art imitating life. And our media needs to imitate the world around us rather than focusing on one avenue of thing. So it's not about, oh, well, they're adding more women because they're pushing an agenda, or they're adding more people of color because they're pushing. It's just like, no, this is just what the world looks like. If that's not what your world looks like, that's your own thing. But this is what the world looks like, and it's time for it to reflect in media. And that's just it. There's no agenda. It's just art imitating life. It's time.
And if it's not what your world looks like, then I'm sorry. That just could be the way that you were raised, where you were born. It just could be the way that your surroundings are. But you chose to enter this galaxy. Like, you should do it with open arms, and you should want to learn about new people and their identities, and you should be open to seeing new stories that maybe you're just not used to seeing, because there is a whole galaxy out there, right? Like if it's a world that you like to be a part of, then be excited to see more of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's going to be misses, right? Like there's going to be storylines that just don't hit. There's going to be
They're not
storylines that
real.
just are unfortunately not well written. You know, it happens sometimes, but there are so many that are just so good, and it's such a, you know, great gift that we have that we're able to experience them as we watch it.
Yeah.
And there's also so many that are not done yet. There's so many that could be explored more. So never just count it out the first time around, because we never know what they're thinking up over there. They're always hitting us with curveballs and surprises around every corner and with every season. So stories can grow, stories can expand, and things can improve. There's always improvement, and there always will be growth.
And as someone who, like, I love Star Wars, and there's certain storylines that are not my favorite. That's okay. That's fine. Like, I have my niche that I like. That's okay. You know, I don't need to like all of Star Wars.
Exactly.
Nobody needs to like all of Star Wars. That's not the point. It's a galaxy. It's not one storyline. It is a galaxy, and that is the beauty of it. There's millions of planets. Well, not millions, but there's a ton. Anyway, there's tons of planets. There's tons of alien species. There's tons of things. And if you're okay with watching, you know, more Twi'leks in your storyline, then you should be okay with watching more females. And that's what I have to say about that. Because, you know, if you're okay with seeing more aliens, then, you know, females are currently on the planet. So,
yeah. Well, I really liked this discussion that we had, and it was really nice to get to talk with a bunch of people that, you know, I'm friends with and share the same interest, and get to talk about the things that we really love about the movies, shows, books, fandom as a whole. And thank you guys for doing this with me. It was really fun.
thank you.
So much fun.
Yeah, I guess we can kind of sign off, say our names again, and then I have a little like thing that shows our Instagram. So I am Hannah. Again, I am Agent of Mandalore.
I'm Brooke.Weaver.
I'm Sai, Side by Sai.
I'm Jillian versus Reality.
And I'm Star Spangled Comet, and I'm Star.
I'm Riley Antoinette. Hey.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed this just as much as we did, and I guess we'll sign off. Bye.
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 May the force be with you.
Always.